Marketing's job is to activate the expertise and the passion inside their organizations, which, sounds a lot like an HR kind of thing, like activating talent, like talent management, making employees engaged and happy in their work. Those are all HR terms. Why are we talking about that in marketing? And the answer is that the only messages that consumers are receptive to are messages from people just like us.
Welcome to the Magnificent Marketing Podcast, where we interview the top marketing experts in the world and keep you up to date on all the changes and best practices to help you grow your business and stay on the cutting edge. Welcome to the show. Hello, everyone. I'm here today again with Michael Brenner. And Michael is the CEO of Marketing Insider Group and co-author of the best-selling book, TheContent Formula. Michael is recognized by Forbes as a Forbes top CMO influencer and social media marketer. Dun & Bradstreet also has recognized him as a top B2B marketer, and Michael has been included on the list of the top 50 most influential content marketers in the country. And today we are going to be talking about HR is the new marketing, tapping into your employees' talents. Michael, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Dave. How are you?
Doing great. Doing excellent. Always fun to talk with you. Always lots of stuff. And this, I have to say, was a very intriguing topic that you came up with, and very, very interested to hear your take on this. But, as we jump in here, I think some people might be a little confused at the title because I don't think people can look at HR as a part of marketing. Can you kind of set the stage and explain further?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually so confusing, and I think to some marketers even a little off-putting. And so I'm not even sure I'm going to continue using it, to be honest. I don't know. Maybe your audience can tell us what they think. But, I mean, the basic, concept behind it, it starts with, I think, stuff that everybody knows. So let me start with some basic facts about the state of marketing today, right? I think most people, whether you're in marketing or even just as a consumer, would agree that we are over-marketed in the world that we live in. We have too many messages, too much content, too many ads, too much interruptions. There's ad blockers. There's, people that take their anger at brands for interrupting their content experiences and advertising at them out on those companies. Surveys show that, 75% of brands state that they wouldn't care, of consumers say that they wouldn't care if the brands they use disappeared completely. That's the brands that they use. So there's this backlash happening really from consumers against over-marketing, the over-marketing that's taking place from us in the marketing industry. Now, people that at the same time have said that they're willing and open and receptive and even grateful for helpful educational pieces of content. So that's the context, right? That's why I'm in content marketing. It's why, I've kind of been doing content marketing for 20 years before I even knew what it was. Like it's the intuitive inbound sort of, marketer that I am, but the large majority of the marketing profession doesn't get that. So how do we address this? And, again, let's go back to some data. Edelman, Trust Barometer every year says that we're decreasing in the amount of trust that we see in government institutions, media outlets, CEOs, basically folks that we used to put in positions of authority, we no longer trust. The people that we do trust are people that are just, quote unquote, just like us. Okay, so when you add all of those things together, what it tells me is marketing's job is not to create ads. Marketing's job is to activate the expertise and the passion inside their organizations, which, sounds a lot like an HR kind of thing, like activating talent, like talent management, making employees engaged and happy in their work. Those are all HR terms. Why are we talking about that in marketing? And the answer is that the only messages that consumers are receptive to are messages from people just like us. The only people just like them or just like us that sit inside companies are sometimes the lower level, mid-level employees who know a lot of things, that have the information and the expertise to share with potential customers, potential employers even, employees even. So HR is the new marketing because the job of marketing is no longer to push out ads. The job of marketing is to activate the passion and the expertise of the employees that already sit inside their company. So that's my soapbox. So I'll stop and I'll let you kind of plug some, maybe hit me with some challenges to that premise.
Well, I would happily do so. if I disagreed with you, and I mean it. I do push back lightly in a lot of these podcasts just to kind of dig further and get clarity, and obviously don't try to get in arguments or anything like that.
Sure.
But no, I would happily disagree with you if I did. And I am not, pandering to you here when I say I 100% agree with you. So much so that I agree with you that in our evolution with our company, I have started to push back greatly on the new accounts we take in, and I do anything and everything I can to have the content production be produced in-house. And the secondary that will go from that I feel comfortable with is us doing interviews with them again. Now, there are certain types of clients that are low, there are some everyday things that you can sort of write about if you're doing like research in and around like a town and things to do and stuff like that you can help out with. But for any like real meaty expertise content, it has to come from the inside because not I wouldn't say has to, but it's 95% chance it's going to be better if it comes from the inside because who knows their business and their clients better than them? I mean, really, nobody, right? So I 1 billion % agree with you. I'm glad you're going this direction because this way we will get the great content because that's where it all starts. And then from there, you're right, marketing's not in the role to produce ads, but they are in the role to facilitate getting the right message in front of the right people. And there's a lot of expertise, as you know, that comes with that. But what's that right message, right? What's that info? And if you start with crap, no matter how much you put glitter on it and get it in front of the right people, you're going to be putting crap in front of the right people that has a bow on it, right? So, no, I'm with you, man. I really am. So you're not going to get any pushback from me. You're only going to get somebody who's right behind you shouting that I agree, because I do. So, but let me just say, though, this is a challenge, though. This is a challenge, and I'm having a specific challenge that I keep pushing with, that company that we came from that we're very intimate with, that printing and publishing company. I'm like, hey, you know about printing and publishing, right? Let's get all of our employees down there to start contributing because we had one of them contribute something. Adobe InDesign picked it up, I'm like, but that was the one flash. But I was like, let's get more, right? So I'm having a challenge with that. I know I'm not the only one having a challenge with that. So let's talk about that. Let's agree that expertise needs to come from the inside. Now, let's help you, who you work with tons of organizations, big and small. You've grown your own company. You know the challenges here. So let's start at the top and work our way down. Setting up a structure to tap into this talent, like within your organization. How have you seen companies get everyone aligned to start to incorporate their employees into their marketing efforts?
Yeah, well, and the reason I said I'm not even sure that HR is the new marketing is the right way to describe it because it confuses people. And I think the reason it's confusing is because, I think the first question is like, well, wait a second, does that mean HR does marketing?
Yeah.
No, that's not really what I'm saying. Does that mean marketing is now responsible for HR? No, that's not really what I'm saying either. It's basically what it means is that there needs to be alignment between marketing and HR to put in a formal program to activate employees. And so I'll give you an example. A company that I work, really closely with and have a lot of affection and alignment with in their messaging is Marketo. And Steve Lucas is a year into the CEO job there, and a former colleague of mine from SAP. One of his very first activities as CEO was to hire a head of employee engagement who reported to the CMO. Which with a dotted line to HR, and her name is Kristen Kane. She actually lives here in the Philadelphia area, not too far from me, and just had her second baby, and just really loving her role because she is responsible for formally putting together a program that tracks and measures the performance, the activation, the engagement levels of their employees based upon knowing and sharing and basically creating content or sharing content or, around the topics that they have an expertise in. And so it's a great example of, well, where does it sit and who's responsible? Well, Steve basically said it's both. I want someone with a marketing background who's going to report to the CMO, but responsible for employee engagement and a dotted line, making sure that there's collaboration with HR, because guess what? When there's happy, engaged, and sharing employees, they're happier. More people want to join a company that has employees that do that kind of stuff. They stay longer. They're more engaged in their work in general, and they're more productive. That's the HR side of it. On the marketing side, they're creating content that resonates with their customers. They're sharing the content that they think is relevant for the people that they serve, internally and externally. So there's both marketing, HR, and business benefits overall that can kind of accrue. So I think Steve's a great example of somebody who's kind of thread the needle between, alignment around activating this great resource that we have with our employees.
That is amazing. And not only that is, people, just in general though, it's hard for them to fill their entire day sometimes for some roles. I'm sure that there's so much wasted time out there, right? Because they're doing the same things that they always do, so they're going to do them slower. They might even go so forth as waste time on social media and stuff that's not work related. But if they're engaged like that, they're going to be filling in gaps of things that they like to do, that they're feeling heard. So I mean, there's so many business benefits to this. Just from the market, those are the business benefits: happier employees, less turnover, more engagement, happier. So all those things, as you know, we've heard time and time again from the Southwest Airlines and the Zappas of the world. All that stuff actually results in the bottom line. Just that part. Yep. But now, on the marketing side though, now they're putting out better information from their employees. The whole company is starting to be identified as a thought leader. So that's amazing. Now, let's take this down a notch on as far as setting up structure. If somebody doesn't necessarily have the resources of, what was that, Marketo you said did this?
Yeah.
Okay, like Marketo is obviously a very large organization. They can actually hire somebody specifically for this, but it almost sounds like if we're identifying somebody within your company to kind of take on this role, let's say it's a 5, 10, 15, 20-person company. Yeah. It sounds like we were looking for management skills, because the content part can be trained and taught, as we know. It's not rocket surgery here. I mean, I've always said content marketing is the hardest and easiest thing to understand, right? Because people just don't get it, and I'm sure you've experienced this. But once they do, they're like, oh, that's what it is? Oh, I got it, right? So that can be trained. So tell me for what you would suggest for somebody who is already working, like identify somebody within a company that could be assigned this role in addition to their normal duties. Who would you be looking for?
Well, so this is where it gets interesting. And you kind of touched upon it, when you mentioned, people wasting time and a lot of folks hanging out on social media during the day and things like that. So I would say even in a small company, it's everyone's job. And so what I mean by that is the thing, I think the genius of what Kristen was able to do at Marketo, being hired, and she was an existing employee that was put into this role. But what happened when Steve did that was it sent a message to the entire organization that creating and sharing content was encouraged by the entire organization. Mm-hmm. So it was a perfect example of top-down change management and innovation from a really talented CEO. Now, if you're at a small company where you don't have that, well, it's every manager's job. And what I mean by that is every single manager needs to be encouraged to tell their team that they'll support their creation and sharing activities, even if it's about cats. So what do I mean by that? I used to use that line at SAP. I used to walk around and I created an actual pitch deck that I went to teams all around the organization: customer service, engineering, product marketing, product development, sales, you name it. I went to these teams and I pitched them, hey, we built a content marketing platform. We're opening it up to employees, and we want you to come write about stuff that you think is relevant. And then, almost every time somebody would say, well, I don't really know too much about technology, but I'm really into cooking. And I say, well, how would you relate cooking to your job? Or how would you relate cooking to the world of technology? Like the bottom line is, I don't care if you love cats. If you share a story about cats, you're going to reach potential customers, potential employees, and potential investors who also love cats. And they're going to say, wait, there's an employee from SAP writing about cat memes and, cats riding Roombas and, all kinds of funny stuff like we see on the internet. And they're going to say, that's pretty cool. That must be a cool company. So the bottom line is, back to where I started, is when companies encourage this kind of sharing, even in the smallest companies, it creates this sort of, positive momentum where every employee starts to realize that it's not something they should hide. It's not something that has to always relate to the company and the products they sell. It's just about being real and being human. And that starts to create, this positive feedback loop of the employees become more passionate and engaged. That creates more effective, productive work time. That generates higher results. It also starts to, increase the reach and engagement that's happening to the potential customer base. So, all kinds of positive things start to happen.
I love what you said. I love what you touched on, with that, with the cats, because content marketing is about educational, helpful, inspirational, or humorous, right? And all those things, like you tap into the emotional part of somebody, that's where buying decisions are made. So you can have educational, helpful, educational, helpful, educational, helpful. Oh, this is hilarious. Oh, not only are they smart, but they have a culture that I align with. Hell yeah. So I love that you touched on that, because I think that's going to get people to open up and start writing about what their passions are, and they can somehow tie it back. Great. Awesome. So that kind of leads me to kind of my next question here, is identifying these skill sets. I know some people are good on camera, others prefer writing. And maybe somebody knows a lot about cat memes, and that would be your humorous part or whatever, right? Well, identifying this, is it as simple as just asking who wants to do what, or do you suggest going another way about this, where you can identify some hidden gems or talent you might not know even currently exist? How have you seen people go about that?
Yeah, it's a really important question, and it's something that I found. I made a mistake really early on in the process, when I tried to do this at SAP. And it started with, I was working with a communications team, and the communications team was like, hey, Joe is our SVP of product in this one area. He's an expert on big data. Let's go get Joe to create content. And what I found when trying to do that, and there was 100 examples of that, was that Joe didn't want to write anything. Joe didn't want to share. He wanted to show up to meetings and do his job and lead his team and do what he was good at, and creating content wasn't one of those things. He had no desire and no willingness, which is fine. It was a learning for us to find that you can't force people to share their expertise. And so what I found really works is just go out and look for the people that want to. And you need to, and it's tough, because most of those people are introverted generally. They're usually extremely creative. They're usually really smart. And they're also generally, and I can put myself in this category, pretty insecure about their ability to create effective content. Like most of us, you and I both create lots of content. You could probably think back to a time not very far, long ago, where you're like, this might be a piece of crap. And we all have that sort of inner dialogue with ourselves. So the job of the person, me in this case at SAP, my job was to convince those folks that wanted to do it, that they needed to break through their fears, that we all face those fears, and that everybody starts with a first blog post or a first video. And, most of the time it's crap, and by the time they get to the 10th or the 50th or the 100th, it's usually pretty darn good. And so, the only way from 0 to 100 is to get started with number 1 and then do number 2. And so that's really the job, I think. Like I said, in a small company, it has to be every manager, because you need every manager to be able to say, hey, if you're someone that wants to share what you're working on, let's go put you in touch with our communications team to help you become a great writer. Or, hey, if you're somebody that just really geeks out on Instagram, maybe there's some ways we can get you to our events where you can talk to customers and take some pictures and start sharing the, customer love on Instagram. All of those kinds of things. There are jobs to be done inside companies. We just need to find the people that really have a passion for doing it.
Yeah, and Marcus Sheridan harps on this all the time, and I love that he does. But he really fires back at, video production companies in particular that say, it needs to be super amazing quality. He's like, screw that. Just do it. You'll get better. And I promise you that inspired me, man. My first podcast, I was scared shitless, and I think it was with Joe Polizzi, actually. It was my first one. And I did the intro, and I fumbled all over it, and I was like, I got to start over, But, now it's pretty natural. But now I'm 40, 50 podcasts in, but I didn't start that way. Nobody starts that way. And Marcus is big on that. He's like, you got to do something. You're not the best parent right away. You're not best anything right away. So you got to take that first step. So I'm glad you're saying that. But to kind of, tie this together though, what is it? Is it simply gathering, the president of the company gets everybody listening, or CMO and everybody's listening, and they say, okay, who wants to do what? Because you did mention the introverts. They're not going to raise their hand.
Mm-hmm.
That's
right.
What have you seen? Like, do you go just have individual meetings and try to inspire them individually? Like, hey, what's your passion? What do you like? Is that a way to go about it?
Yeah, so I actually, and if folks want to come to my website or reach out to me directly, I actually have a pitch deck. And it's really, I took the pitch deck I used at SAP and I just modified it. In fact, I think I did a little bit of a video on this, kind of a training course, and I think I even used my exact deck from SAP. But basically what I did was, so one, it starts with, you have to have a mission. And so for us, it was, hey, we created this content platform, this hub, this portal, whatever you want to call it, where employees and customers and influencers could share, comments, blog articles, videos, infographics, and whatever they wanted. And we defined the purpose of that platform. It wasn't to sell SAP products. It was, we want to help business professionals understand how technology drives innovation, to learn innovative stories from other companies or employees or customers. So that was the mission. Mm-hmm. Then we said, hey, if you're interested in contributing to that, and, hey, cat videos on Roombas are pretty innovative. They can make us laugh. So let's think broadly about how employees might want to contribute to that platform. And then if you're one of those people who wants to raise your hand, then now here are the things that most people say. And I went through basically the myth busting of fears. Mm-hmm. Most people are afraid to start that first one. There's, this whole creator class of people that are starting to be recognized around the world for all these innovative things. There are people that are just too afraid to take that first leap and jump into the deep end of the pool, whatever analogy you want to use. So, the second part was, so the first part was a mission. Second part was, most people in a position that want to contribute are afraid. Let's break through that fear and break it down. Mm-hmm. And then the third piece was, okay, well, how do you take that first step? And it was, pretty simple, basic personal branding 101. Set up a social profile, decide what you're passionate about, what's the topic you'd really like to contribute on, find people and look at other people that are already creating content that's effective in your space, reach out to me, that was one of the action items, but it was basically a very, very simple 1, 2, 3 step action plan for, okay, if you've made the decision, you're going to break through your fear, you're going to take this first step, here's a simple action plan for you to do that.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Hey, send that over to me. We'll embed that.
Yeah, we'll do.
Into the blog post. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think on us, as you're doing that, I think we need to, let these people know, like, hey, by the way, inspirational and humorous is part of our equation here. And you come up with like we do a marketing faux pas Friday, magnificent marketing faux pas Friday. It's just a stupid little meme that's like the faux pas of the marketing world. It's funny, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you think about a big company and you get to put together like a big blog piece out of it, that would be way better. With our size, it's just not feasible or doesn't, but for some people, so that's, I think, alerting them like, hey, by the way, there's all these other kinds of options for you to share your talent. So I love that. I love it. Now, okay, we're past that. You've accomplished it. Boom. Yep. You got somebody in charge, somebody's reporting to it, or you just have the president of the company. If it's a smaller company, has this into this culture. You've identified, you got people going. Ongoing management and structure of this now, because as you probably experienced and seen a lot out there, a lot of advice going around, but sometimes not the execution, right? Or a lot of excitement at the beginning and then not the follow through. And this is actually the more difficult. I don't know. I'll call it 50-50. The strategy, very important. Identifying the talent, very important. But then actually doing is very important. Yeah. So how have you seen any tips that you have for keeping track on the efforts? I can imagine large companies that they do this, they might have tens or even hundreds of people that they can tap into, and it could potentially get overwhelming and all over the place. So what do you have to say here?
Yeah, so I think the natural tendency of companies large and small is to want to overthink, overmanage, over-edit, over-scrutinize the content that's going to be created and shared. And so the only way to make these kind of programs scale and be successful is kind of like chill out. Like companies need, especially like the brand police. The brand police at big companies are going to be like, whoa, we need to put people through a formal communications training so when they use our logo, it's the right size and the right color. And it's like, no, this is not about the company. This is about individuals sharing their own opinions and their own thoughts and their own expertise. So we need to put them fully in control of those opinions, thoughts, and expertise. So, so basically you build a machine, you build a volunteer army of contributors, creators. And then, the only structure that I found is needed is scheduling and some visual support. So for example, I'm a great writer, but I'm really not great at putting a picture, a profile featured photo next to the blog post. So, so I outsource that. I go find somebody that's good at picking pictures and they do that for me. So that's kind of what I advise companies to do is, for example, give Joe the Tuesday blog post and let him write whatever he wants every Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Because the harder you try to scrutinize, the harder you try to put pressure around what Tuesday Joe is going to do, the less likely he is to do it. And so when you just chill out a little bit and let the machine, this volunteer army do what they want to do, that's how you start to see success at scale.
That's really, that's great advice, Michael, because I didn't know what you were going to say, and I didn't even know what my opinion was on it. I didn't. I was trying to think like, well, which way is to go? Is there a major quality control involved? But you're saying, hey, just turn it loose. The benefit, I think, at the bottom line of what you're saying is the benefits outweigh any sort of risk here of something potentially bad happening. We hear 1 in a million times some employee goes off the rails and something on social media and they end up getting fired for it. But but those are they pick, we love hearing bad stuff, right? Which is horrible, but that's how the media exists, right? So those are by far the outliers. For every one of those, you have 1,000 posts that are doing amazing and 1,000 employees who are moving the bottom line by getting involved. So, okay, awesome. Yeah. Now, on that note, though, I assume, some sort of regular meeting or checkpoint of a review overall over time would be beneficial here, potentially. Let me see what you have to say and what you've seen. What have you seen there? And if so, like the frequency of these meetings, weekly, monthly, quarterly, what do you suggest?
Yeah, so it's another interesting counterintuitive kind of response. And so originally I put together an editorial board, and I reached out across the organization at SAP and tried to find, all the folks that might have an opinion or potential input or potential output even from a content marketing activity, publishing sort of platform. And what happened was we got together once, and in that first meeting, there were light bulbs that were flying everywhere. Because once people realized what we were trying to do, they realized that they either had something to give or something to get from this kind of an activity. After that, we kind of talked about, like you mentioned, there's like social media guide. Like we identified some guidelines, some operating procedures, if you will, and very importantly, the reporting expectations that all of this constituents and stakeholders had. After that first meeting, we scheduled the second meeting and nobody showed up. The reason nobody showed up is because there was no reason to have a second meeting. So once we identified editorial guidelines, social media guidelines, reporting expectations, and the operating procedures, the machine was built and the machine was going and it was working. And so all we did was, and I hired a really amazing talent, to sort of manage this for me. But we did a series of monthly reports that went out that kind of took a question and answer basis like, hey, how are we doing? Where are we seeing value? What content topics are resonating? Who are the top authors? And we basically published that report to the entire company on an internal portal. And it was amazing. What happened was it started creating, we gamified it. People were like, wait, Tuesday Joe's the best author of the week. Well, I want to be the best author of the week. So we started seeing people come out of the woodwork to say, I want to start contributing. How can I help? I think I have an idea for a way you can optimize the site. Hey, what about video? You don't do too many explainer videos. Maybe we should try that. Like we saw people starting to come out of the woodwork because we created a centralized machine that was working, that was scalable, that was effective. And then we took, basically tapped into people's self-interest. And our job was just to manage that interest and that momentum.
Like it, love it. And I'm sure that's music to the ears of many people, because that part, if there is going to be tons of, meetings and analysis, then it starts to feel overwhelming and it feels like almost a whole nother job. But if you can create the machine up front, have somebody analyze, publish, then basically nature takes care of itself.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Awesome. I want to circle back to what you were talking about earlier with Marketo, and it's one thing getting the everything produced and getting everybody involved. That's enough of a challenge, and it's awesome. And even if you don't have that, this could still apply, because you could still have some point people that do produce the content, but you want to tap into everybody helping with the sharing and distribution. And this is something we've been harping on and looking to move forward. And it's a challenge, but it's basically free social media advertising. You're talking, if you have a large company, you're talking about potentially tens of thousands of dollars of value in what you would pay for ads if you get everybody sharing. And if you're smaller, it's all relative. If you're sharing, if you're smaller, it could be hundreds or in the thousands of dollars. But it's all relative, and it's real value. As you know, a share is worth more than an ad. And so I would like for you to talk to me about a couple things. One, what is reasonable when we're asking for employees to share? And on that note, what is optimal? Because I know some people might not be comfortable sharing on their personal platforms, like Facebook, for instance. Yet other platforms like LinkedIn, they should probably feel okay if it's business related, but sometimes you might even get pushback there. So one, what do you think is reasonable and fair to ask of an employee? And then, and two, what's optimal? And then also, I want you to think through a like, a share, and a comment, because those are all different forms of engagement that I feel anybody should be able to like something on Facebook, but sharing is another thing, and then commenting is another. So talk to me about what you've seen out there and what suggestions you have.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack in that question. So I'll start with a couple of ground rules. Number one, again, companies that try to force people to share stuff fail miserably. Their employees end up feeling like they're prisoners, and that they're being asked to do things that they're not comfortable with, and it's, as my 14-year-old would say, is cringy. Very cringy, right? Like, hey, share out this press release about this new product launch. I'm not really into that, so I'm not going to share it. And if you make me, or you even worse, subtly incentivize it, I'm just going to be subtly bitter about the company. So it has to be natural and authentic. However, there is a way you can, back to, kind of gamifying it. One of the things at SAP we did was we used Clout to identify like top influencer scores for employees. And what that ended up doing was the people that cared about keeping score of their quote unquote influence, however you want to measure it. We didn't get in, we tried to stay away from the controversial mechanisms of tracking that kind of stuff, and just said, hey, we're going to pick one metric, and we're going to use that to say, here are the top 25 people who are engaged in social media on any topic. It wasn't just on SAP. It was just SAP employees and their influence. And what happened was that created, again, self-interest, tapped into self-interest. People wanted to get on that list. So people started, hey, I got to build my audience. Hey, maybe I should share some stuff. Maybe I should start creating stuff. And it started, again, creating that positive feedback loop. So it can't be forced, number one. Number two, measure it, because if you measure it and communicate the most influential folks inside your organization, there's a number of different things that you can do to subtly incentivize that, and then it taps again back into people's self-interest. So that's another thing I think that people need to think about. The third piece is measure what engages. So, for example, if the CEO does a 10-minute video on, the future direction of the company and all the product launches that they're going to be making, check and see how many employees liked and shared that. If the CEO gets up and does a 5-minute video on his family vacation and how he was reflecting on how lucky he is or she is to work at the company that she or he works in, and the amazing employees that he's or she's surrounded by, check and see how many people liked and shared and engaged with that. So, again, it kind of comes back to metrics. Companies should be looking at the kind of content that actually engages employees, that they willfully share, and then actually start to tap into that. Like, for example, Marketo does a lot of, did you adopt a dog, or did you get a dog, or do you have a new baby kind of announcements. And what they're finding is a lot of employees engage with that stuff. Well, guess what? they're all building the social footprint of Marketo by actively encouraging the sharing of that kind of stuff. Because guess what? People say, hey, Marketo employees are real people with babies and puppies and kittens. Maybe I want to work for a company that celebrates these life milestones of their employees. And so, those are the kinds of diversity, like LBG, like supporting, when partners get together in ceremonies and all these kinds of things, whether you agree with, some of the controversial stuff out there or not, celebrating diversity, celebrating life moments, being real, being human, those are the kinds of things that companies, really find are, become the most engaging pieces of content.
Awesome. And on that note, is it as easy as like an internal email? Is this a structured email that you say, hey, here's our recent post, like, share, comment if you'd like, type of thing?
Yeah. So
you don't want people to like remember when the posts are being posted or go look at them.
Yeah. So there's a couple platforms that I do want to mention. Our friend Jason Miller. Back to your last question. I mean, he did some research because of LinkedIn Elevate, which is one of the platforms that a large enterprise could use. In the research for the launch of LinkedIn Elevate, what Jason found was that most employers, like if you think Marketo, the Marketo LinkedIn account, let's say it has 10 followers. Well, when you add up the aggregate number of followers for all their 3,000 or whatever number of employees they have, what you could find is you can find that they have 10 to 20 times more connections than your company account does. So that was one of the pieces of insights that he found. The other one was that employee shared content was 3 times more likely to be engaged with than company content.
Yeah.
So he found real reasons why companies should invest in a platform. So LinkedIn Elevate is one. Influitive is another one. That's actually what Marketo uses. And then for free, you can use Google AMP or Gaggle AMP. Gaggle AMP is a relative. I think it's free, or at least it's free up to a certain number of users that any company can use, where a social media manager can throw a blog post or an article or even a press release into the system. And essentially it provides an opportunity for every employee in that company to share that out. That, it's a voluntary thing. They can choose to share it or not share it. They can automate the sharing. So those are 3 tools that companies should consider.
Okay. Awesome. And definitely, in addition to your slide share there that sets up how to get everything going, definitely send over also the tools for the gamification stuff.
Yeah.
Because keeping track of all that, I think I've struggled with this, and I think that's obviously the way to go. I do think that it's not hard to just like something, but if you force anybody to do anything versus them buying in, it's a gargantuan difference of what to and ongoing sustained success there. Yeah. So on that note, sustained success, ongoing content ideas. You often hear people say they run out of ideas, but does this kind of just in your natural evolution of people getting involved and wanting to get involved, are you finding them come up with their own content ideas, or do you have somebody else out there that helped facilitating this at all?
Yeah. I actually addressed this in the deck and the video that I'm going to send to you, and we could embed in the blog post for this podcast. So, one of the things I had 2 people working for me at SAP. The one person, her job was to curate content, and I'll give you an example. This is a little controversial. Basically she used Google Alerts, and she curated stuff like big data research reports. So we would identify the number of keywords that we wanted to actively search on, and if somebody did a quote unquote big data research report, she would get a Google alert. And we created a database. It was really just an Excel spreadsheet, but it was a database. And a lot of times those research reports were from competitors. IBM did an IBM big data research report. So what we would encourage some of our early contributors to do was to find this already successful, already shared piece of content. Sometimes it was in the form of competitive research or industry analyst research, and cover it like a journalist. And so basically what we said was, hey, if you don't know what to write, we'll show you what's already been written, and you can just cover it like if you were going to, watch the President of the United States give a speech, and you were a journalist for the Washington Post, and you were going to write about what the president said. Well, you can do the same thing with online research, even if it's a competitor's. You can just say, hey, IBM produced this research report about big data, and here's the 6 things it said. and you link to the report. So as long as you use proper citations and you don't plagiarize, it's an absolutely valid. In fact, every newspaper produced every single day in the entire country is basically a researcher, a journalist covering somebody else's piece of content. So that was the trick that we used. We created a sort of a Google Excel or Google Sheet or Excel spreadsheet of these Google alerts on research reports, infographics, videos, top performing content on the keywords that we wanted to rank for, and handed those to our earliest contributors and got them to sort of wet their whistle, kind of get those writing muscles going by essentially rewriting or contextualizing in a relevant way stuff that's already been written.
Love it. Yeah, you're very systematic in your approach, and I love it because it's systems and levers, but you set it up, and then it just can keep going, just kind of like an engine. So no, I hear what you're saying, and I assume on that data spreadsheet you have a column there for the person who's tied to those words, correct? So you know who to contact, right? Gotcha.
That's right.
All right, cool. Yeah, no, I'm hearing you. I love it. Love it. Anybody on a medium to large company that's listening to this should be getting the exact blueprint for how to do this. You're killing it. Okay, let's move on a little bit to another benefit of this. We've talked about how obviously just a company culture improves, which we've heard ad nauseum improves the bottom line. We've talked about how this will not only do the bottom line in that way, but you're going to be having better, more engaging content, and you're going to be covering all bases of content marketing. Again, helpful, educational, inspirational, and humorous. So you're going to be covering lots, so it's going to help with that. And we've also, talked about how it's going to help with spreading the word for free by getting people involved that way. Now, but there's another tie in here that I think is another benefit, is the sales attribution part of it. We all know that content is not only used, for branding and bringing in leads, but it also can be tactically utilized by the sales team during their actual sales process. So I would like for you just to, how have you seen like this work into this system where, this is being produced and then the salespeople have like a pool of stuff to pull from, or they know what, do you follow kind of what I'm asking there?
Totally. Absolutely. So I'm going to make the most controversial statement of the year right now. It's only January 11th, so I don't know what air date we've got for this podcast, but here's the most controversial statement you'll hear yet this year. ABM is bullshit. And what I mean by that is account-based marketing has existed in some form or another from the dawn of selling. Salespeople know exactly what kinds of content their key accounts need. And all ABM is doing is it's creating these pretty little boxes of technology that you can stick it in. It's I'm shocked at the amount of interest in ABM technology because, we've had data rooms and store rooms and microsites. They've all come, social selling. I mean, all of these terms have been around forever. So let me get back to your question. When we started the platform at SAP, one of our key metrics of success was subscribers. We wanted to start building a database because it was an asset. We thought, hey, if we've got a prospect database of people that are early stage on some of these technology topics, we can nurture them. And then we were disappointed because the first, 80, 100 people, the CEO is actually one of the first subscribers, but they were almost all in sales. And then we started talking to the salespeople, like, why, we wanted the prospects in this, to be subscribers. Why are you guys all signing up for it? And because they were hungry. They loved it. They loved the non-promotional, helpful, educational, thoughtful pieces of content that we were developing. And so here's the thing when it comes to sales. When you create educational, thoughtful, helpful content, sales is probably going to be your biggest customer of that asset. Salespeople know how to use it. They're going to use their personal relationships and connections that they have on LinkedIn or via their own inbox to start to generate those, and improve those relationships with the content that you're creating. So definitely think of sales as a customer of this process, both a contributor and a customer of the process.
Now, how are you alerting them? How have you seen people alert them of the pieces of content that could be a nice bullet in their repertoire there?
So a couple things. I mean, number one, every content platform that a brand invests in should have a subscriber or subscription opportunity. I've talked, I mean, the whole book, The Content Formula that I wrote, basically the trick to that is if you use subscribers as the metric of success, you will not only be able to define success, but you'll be able to increase the ROI of your marketing overall. That's basically the trick of the Content Formula book that I wrote, is focus on subscribers to not only show you what works from a content perspective, but to monetize your marketing efforts overall. So that's number one.
Okay.
And then you want to encourage your salespeople to sign up. So if you subscribe to the content, become a customer of the content, and then they can decide, hey, I want to use this one or that one. Now we also had the person that did reporting for me on my team. One of the things that she did get asked to do a couple of times with two or three different sales VPs was to create a customized newsletter just for sales. You know, we were a little hesitant to do that. We ended up developing the program. It did get kicked off. You know, it sort of got pulled into a company portal that was a sales enablement platform. You know, kind of an early precursor to ABM. In the end, what we found was that the salespeople were just subscribing directly, and they were creating their own sort of templates and communication mechanisms to alert their own prospects about that content. So, you know, you can create something formal, but, you know, again, I think just allowing salespeople to figure out what's best for them is the best way to go about it.
Understood. Yeah, I mean, and you always want to, when we train salespeople, it's you give them the freedom. You know, you give them a framework. You know, you give them the basic scripts, but you don't tell them to memorize anything, and you give them the creative freedom to insert their personality. And I guess the same could be said for what they would feel comfortable with, or what resonates for them, or what they feel aligns with their personal thoughts on a sales, for the product that they're working for. So yeah, just describing them and letting them pick and choose where and what part of their sales process might be really beneficial to them. But obviously, if they're good, they'll want as much help as they can get, as long as they don't think they know it all, which they'll buy into it. So I hear you. Yeah, and again, same with your systems and levers. You set everything up, and you're not bogging yourself down with a bunch of unnecessary tests. There's just a bunch of upfront work, and then it rolls.
I mean, it all comes back to scale. Every time, a lot of people complain, oh, content marketing, it doesn't scale. It's because they're over-engineering the solution, and it's, you build the machine, you let it run, you pour some gasoline in every once in a while, and that's all it takes. And it's like I said, it's counterintuitive on a lot of different levels, but it works.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. Well, let's kind of end on mistakes. Not on a negative note. In fact, we'll bring it back to the positive in a second to end. But for right now, where are you seeing people make mistakes here? I know you kind of just mentioned one a little bit, but more specifically, something that people can understand, because what you just said they might not know that they're doing that. So what are some specific things that you see people do that they can be like, oh shit, I'm doing this. I just realized I'm doing it wrong, and I need to stop and rethink this. Where are you seeing the most common mistakes being made that kind of throw this system off?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of touched upon it, but I think the biggest mistake, we only lightly touched upon the biggest one. The biggest mistake is cultures and managers that actually discourage sharing. If you've got a manager that's like, hey, your job is to create TPS reports, and if you're not creating TPS reports, you shouldn't be here or whatever. I mean, that kind of old school thinking about how to manage a team or an employee, that's got to stop. Companies that allow that cancer to fester are not going to survive in the digital age that we live in. That's number one. So the biggest mistake, and that's why I use the whole term HR is the new marketing, is it's got to be everyone's job, every manager's job to encourage their team to share. So that's number one. The flip side of that is the companies that go too far. And the second biggest mistake, and again, we did touch upon this, but it's companies that try to put in formal programs that, hey, here's our latest press release. You can win points in our internal portal community if you share our press release. That kind of forced mechanism never works. In fact, it often backfires in many companies. So, again, set up the platform, set up the encouragement, gamify and tap into people's self-interest. Do not force it.
No, but you mentioned not forcing it, but you just mentioned like the gamification, but then you said, here it is, share. You didn't mean it that way. When you were telling people here it is, you're saying, here it is, you must share it. Don't do that. But here it is, share, for the points. I mean, that's the gamification part, right?
No, but what I'm saying is companies that try to gamify it by essentially guilting people into sharing stuff that's specifically about the company, that is not something that I would recommend.
Okay. How would you phrase it if you were the person in charge in rolling this out? Like, in your words, you're standing in front of everybody. How would you encourage and set this up where you get the mindset in the right place and the results eventually that you desire?
Measure influence. So, for example, when I blatantly shared a promotional piece of content from SAP, guess what happened to my Twitter followers? Nobody retweeted it. When I shared a personal story about why I loved my job, 150 people shared it, right? So when you force somebody to share something that's not authentic, they're not going to see the results on the engagement side that they would if they shared something that was authentic. So the thing to measure is the engagement level of your employee base, and that should be generally moving forward, not backwards.
Okay, awesome. Well, Michael, this has been very awesome. Tell me, what's your prediction for this mindset moving forward here in 2018 and beyond?
I think we still got a long way to go. I mean, I looked at 2017. I usually use stats to try to inform my opinions, but we all know that banner ads don't work, and yet 12% increase in the brand investment in digital display in 2017. So we're still continuing in 2018 to throw good money after bad, interrupt our audiences, try to talk about who we are, what we sell, and why we're better, and how great we are. I think 2018 is going to continue to see unfortunately, more of that kind of promotion. We're going to continue to anger our customers and our prospects with that kind of marketing. I think inbound content marketing, digital marketing mindseted marketers are still in the minority. Which is why there's plenty of people out there talking about, why content marketing, inbound marketing, digital marketing, modern marketing are needed. I'm going a step further, and I'm talking about, nope, this is about culture, right? We're still buying ads because we've got cultures in place where people think promotion is the right thing to do. And that's not a marketing problem. That's a business problem. And so that's why I'm talking about HR as the new marketing, and marketing CMOs should own culture. And, because that's a 2020 problem. So I think 2018, we're still going to see a retrenching into, the old school 1960s form of Mad Men marketing. But I think by 2020, those companies they're going to be burned. They're going to get their hands burned on the stove in a big fat way. Customers are going to be angry, and they're going to vote with their pocketbooks and wallets. And I still think we're a few years away from seeing that turn. All
right. Well, there you have it. Everybody get on board, and you'll be ahead of the game.
That's
Michael,
right.
Appreciate it, buddy. It's always a joy and a pleasure to speak with you. And until next, I'm sorry. One more thing here. How can everybody continue to learn from you? You obviously have a lot to be learned.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, come check me out on marketinginsidergroup.com. I publish an article just about every day, sometimes 2 a day during the business week. I'm trying to share my thoughts and tips on digital marketing, content marketing, leadership, culture. You can follow me on Twitter at Brenner Michael, so my last name then first name, and also connect with me on LinkedIn and Facebook, and would love to connect with your audience on any of those platforms.
Awesome, and just to spell it, it's at BRENNERMICHAEL. All right. Thank you, Michael. Until next time.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the latest podcast. Feel free to go to magnificent.com/blog to see the show notes for this interview, as well as those from many other of the world's top marketing experts. Have a great day.